"She's not in there," the little beggar girl said to the millionaire standing before his daughter's sealed casket. "When they open it, what they find inside shocks even the police. Comment and give my story a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help." The cold morning wind whipped across the 4-year-old's face as she clung to the rusty fence of the cemetery. Her small, dirty hands trembled not only from the cold, but from the hunger that had haunted her for days. The torn and stained dress she wore barely covered her frail body, making her look like she was only 2 years old. Her large, deep-set eyes watched intently the movement among the marble mausoleums, waiting for the right moment. When the tall, elegant man appeared at the main gate, she knew immediately that it was him. Even at 4 years old, she had developed a keen instinct for recognizing important people. The dark, impeccable suit, the shoes that shone even in the weak light of the cloudy day, and especially the erect posture that emanated power and wealth, all confirmed that this was the millionaire she had been looking for weeks. The man walked slowly among the graves, carrying a bouquet of white roses. His handsome face was marked by pain. Premature wrinkles around his green eyes betrayed sleepless nights. At 30 years old, he seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime of suffering. There was something majestic about his presence, even devastated by the loss, as if the tragedy had only intensified his natural impressiveness. The girl followed him silently, keeping hidden behind the larger tombstones. She knew she had only one chance, a single moment to do what needed to be done. When he stopped before the most imposing mausoleum in the cemetery, a white marble structure with gold details that contrasted with the simplicity of the other graves, she took a deep breath. The man knelt before the tomb, placing the flowers carefully on the bronze plaque that shone in the pale light. His hands trembled slightly as he ran his fingers over the engraved letters. It was always like this, every week at the same time, with the same white roses. The girl had observed this ritual for an entire month, waiting for the right moment to act. "She's not in there," the small voice cried, cutting through the heavy silence of the cemetery. The man turned abruptly, searching for the source of the voice. His eyes met the fragile figure of the girl, who was approaching slowly, still holding the fence as if she needed support to stand. The contrast was shocking. His elegance against her misery, wealth against extreme poverty. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice hoarse with surprise and confusion. "The casket is empty," the girl repeated, getting closer. "It's just clothes and a rag doll inside. She's not dead." The man's face paled instantly. He stood up slowly, as if the world had begun to spin differently. "How could you know that? Who are you?" The girl didn't answer immediately. Instead, she began to hum a soft melody, a song that made the man take a step back, as if he had been punched in the stomach. It was his daughter's favorite song, the song she sang every night before bed. No one else knew that specific melody. He himself had composed it for her. "Where did you learn that song?" he whispered, his eyes filling with tears. "She taught me," the girl said simply. "She said you come here every week with white flowers, that you cry and talk to a cold stone. But she's not here to listen." The man felt his legs weaken. For 6 months he had cried at that tomb, talked to a headstone, brought flowers to an empty casket. The possibility that the girl suggested was impossible, absurd. But something in her trembling voice carried a truth he couldn't ignore. "This is impossible," he murmured, more to himself than to her. I was at the hospital when—" "You saw what they wanted you to see," the girl interrupted. "But she wasn't in that bed. She never was." The wind increased in intensity, making the dry leaves dance among the graves. The man looked at the mausoleum that had cost a fortune, built with the finest marble that his money could buy, adorned with details that represented all his wealth accumulated through years of investment on Wall Street. He had spent a significant portion of his net worth on that monument to mourning, and now a beggar girl was saying that it was all a hoax. "If this is true," he began, his voice breaking. "It's true," the girl affirmed with an eerie certainty for someone so young. "She's alive, but not for long if you don't do something." The man knelt down to the girl's height, observing her thin and dirty face. There was something in her eyes, a depth that shouldn't exist in such a small child. "How can I be sure? How can I trust you?" The girl extended her small hand and touched his face gently. "Because she told me where the secret place is, in the garden of your house, where she hid the treasures you gave her, under the third stone of the path that leads to the fountain." The man's heart stopped. No one knew about that secret hiding place. Not even his current wife knew about the games he played with his daughter, the small gifts he hid for her to find during her games in the garden of the mansion. It was a secret between father and daughter, something they had never shared with anyone else. "My God," he whispered, the tears finally overflowing, "if you're telling the truth, if she really is alive, then will you help me find her?" the girl asked, her voice mixing hope and despair. The man nodded slowly, still processing the magnitude of what was happening. His fortune built over years, his investments in various assets, all his net worth. None of that mattered if his daughter was really alive and needed him. As they walked away from the cemetery together, neither of them noticed the figure watching them from afar, hidden behind an ancient mausoleum. An elegant woman in a black dress and sunglasses held her cell phone tightly, dialing a number that would change everything. The mansion stood imposingly against the grey afternoon sky, its high walls and wrought-iron gates reflecting the wealth accumulated over decades of successful business. The millionaire drove in silence, his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel of the luxury car as he watched the girl in the passenger seat. She had fallen asleep during the trip, exhausted by hunger and cold, and now she seemed even smaller, more fragile, huddled in the leather seat that cost more than many people earn in a year. When they arrived, he carefully carried her inside the house, avoiding making noise. The first thing he did was feed her. He prepared a simple plate, watching as she devoured the food with a desperate hunger that broke his heart. Each bite was as if it were the last meal of her life, and he realized that it had probably been days since she had eaten properly. "What's your name?" he asked gently, sitting in front of her in the spacious kitchen. The girl stopped eating for a moment, looking at him with her large, haunted eyes. "I don't have a name," she said simply. "She called me Little Angel." His heart clenched. His daughter had always been affectionate, always invented special nicknames for the people she liked. "And where did you see her last?" "In the house where they took me after they took her from the hospital," the girl replied, returning to eat. "A big house, but not like this one. There were many children there, all working." Before he could ask more questions, the sound of high heels echoed through the marble hallway. His wife appeared in the kitchen door, elegant as always, but with an expression of surprise that quickly turned into disguised irritation. "Darling, who is this child?" she asked, adjusting the pearl necklace around her neck. "I found her at the cemetery," he explained, watching his wife's reaction carefully. "She was alone, hungry. I thought I'd help her." The woman approached, her cold eyes examining the girl as if she were an inconvenient object. "What a noble gesture on your part, but surely there are appropriate institutions for cases like this. We can't just bring anyone into our house." "She stays here for as long as it takes," he said, his voice carrying a firmness that made his wife step back slightly. That night, after the girl fell asleep in one of the guest rooms, he decided to verify the story about the secret hiding place. With a flashlight in hand, he went to the back garden, where an ornate Italian marble fountain dominated the center of the carefully planned space. The cobblestone path led to it, and he counted to the third stone, exactly as the girl had described. With trembling hands, he removed the heavy stone. Underneath, he found a small metal box that he himself had hidden there months before the tragedy. Inside were the little treasures he used to leave for his daughter to find: a gold bracelet with her name engraved on it, some old coins from his collection, and a note written in his own handwriting, promising a special trip when she turned 5. Tears fell on the box as he processed the devastating reality. Only 3 people in the world knew about that hiding place: him, his daughter, and now that mysterious girl. There was no logical explanation for how she could know, unless she had really talked to his daughter. During the following days, the girl slowly recovered. He bought new clothes for her, provided medical care, and watched as she gradually gained weight and color in her face. But it was during these weeks of living together that something extraordinary began to happen. She demonstrated intimate knowledge about his daughter that seemed impossible. She liked to draw butterflies in the steam on the bathroom mirror after her bath, the girl said one morning while they were having coffee together. And she always counted to 10 before going down the stairs, because she said that way the steps wouldn't make noise. He almost dropped his cup. These were his daughter's particular quirks, small rituals that she had invented and never shared with anyone. How could this girl know? She also hid sweets under her pillow, the little one continued, and she liked to pretend she was flying when you carried her in your arms up the stairs. The wife, who was present during this conversation, paled visibly. "What a fertile imagination," she said, forcing a nervous smile. "Children invent the most elaborate stories." But the millionaire knew they weren't inventions. Every detail was real. Every memory was true. And the more the girl spoke, the more he noticed that his wife was tense, nervous, as if she were walking on broken glass. It was in the 3rd week that the girl said something that changed everything. "She told me about the night the woman with the pearl necklace talked to strange men on the phone," the girl murmured, playing with a doll he had bought her. "She was hidden behind the door and heard when she said the plan needed to happen soon, before you found out about the missing money." The silence that followed was deafening. The wife, who was arranging flowers in a vase nearby, dropped one of the roses, her fingers trembling violently. "What kind of absurd conversation is this?" she said, trying to maintain her composure. "A 4-year-old inventing conspiracies. That's ridiculous." But the millionaire was carefully watching every micro-expression on his wife's face. He had built his fortune reading people, identifying subtle signs during complex negotiations involving millions on Wall Street, and all the signs pointed to guilt, fear, and poorly disguised despair. "What missing money?" he asked calmly, his eyes fixed on his wife. I don't know what this child is talking about," she stammered. "You know how she has this strange imagination. She said you had a secret drawer in your office," the girl continued, oblivious to the growing tension, "with papers you signed when he wasn't home, and a different phone that you used to talk to people he didn't know." The wife dropped the vase, which shattered on the marble floor with a sound that echoed throughout the house. She looked at her husband with wide eyes of panic, then at the girl, and finally at the door, as if calculating the distance to a possible escape. I need to leave," she murmured, grabbing her Italian leather bag. "I have an important appointment." But when she turned to leave, she found the millionaire blocking her path. For the first time since they were married, he looked at her not with love or trust, but with the cold suspicion of a man who had just discovered that he was living with a stranger. "I think you should explain about this secret drawer before you leave," he said, his voice low but charged with an authority that made the woman step back. At that moment, the phone rang, a shrill sound that cut through the tension like a blade. The wife looked at the phone with evident terror, as if she knew exactly who was calling and what it meant for her carefully guarded secrets. The phone continued to ring insistently as the wife stood paralyzed, her eyes darting between the phone and her husband. Her hands were trembling so much that she needed to lean on the mahogany table to avoid falling. The millionaire watched her every move with the precision of someone who had learned to read subtle signs during years negotiating million-dollar contracts on the stock market. "Aren't you going to answer it?" he asked, taking a step towards the phone. "No!" she cried, reaching out to stop him. It's just telemarketing. They always call at this time." But the girl, who was sitting on the floor playing with the doll, raised her head and said in her small, clear voice, "She always answered that phone when you weren't here, and she always spoke quietly, as if it were a secret." The phone stopped ringing, leaving a heavy silence in the air. The wife was breathing heavily, as if she had been running a marathon. The millionaire approached her slowly, watching as her once serene face transformed into a mask of contained panic. "I need to know about this secret drawer," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Now!" "There is no drawer," she lied, but her voice came out weak and unconvincing. "This child is making things up. She probably has mental problems after living on the streets." The girl stopped playing and looked directly at the woman. "She told me the drawer is behind the picture on the left wall, the one with yellow flowers, and that there's a tiny key hidden inside the blue vase on the shelf." The blood completely drained from the wife's face. These were details too specific to be invented by a child. The millionaire immediately went to the office, followed by his wife, who was desperately trying to stop him. "You're being ridiculous," she said, trying to block his path. "Are you going to believe the fantasies of a street urchin?" But he was already in the office, looking for the blue vase that was on the bookshelf. When he found it and looked inside, his fingers touched a small golden key that he had never seen before. His heart beat faster as he went to the picture of yellow flowers, a wedding gift that his wife had personally chosen. Behind the picture, there was a disguised opening in the wall, so well done that it seemed part of the original decor. The key fit perfectly into the hidden lock, revealing a secret drawer that contained documents that would make his world crumble. Inside were papers he had never seen, unauthorized bank transfers from his accounts, forged life insurance documents, and even more disturbing, a series of photographs of his daughter with people he didn't recognize. At the bottom of the drawer, he found a second cell phone and a folder with the name of a doctor who worked at the private hospital where his daughter had been treated. "What is this?" he whispered, flipping through the documents with trembling hands. The wife was leaning against the wall, tears streaming down her face. The mask of devoted wife had finally fallen, revealing a desperate and guilty woman. "You don't understand," she murmured. "I needed to. The debt was too big." "What debt?" he asked, holding a transfer of 500,000 in Bitcoin that had been made from his account without his knowledge. "My brother. He owed money to dangerous people. They threatened to kill our entire family if I didn't get the money." The words came out between sobs. "I had no choice." The millionaire continued to examine the papers, each document revealing a deeper layer of betrayal. There were contracts with the doctor, payments to hospital staff, and even more shocking, an agreement with a family that lived in the outskirts of town, people who had apparently agreed to take care of a child in exchange for a significant amount of money. "You sold my daughter," he said, his voice coming out as an incredulous murmur. "You actually sold my daughter." "It was temporary," she shouted desperately. "It was only until I got the money to pay my brother's debts. Then I was going to get her back, I swear. And the funeral, the doctor who declared the death, was it all staged?" She nodded miserably. "The doctor was having financial problems. He needed money to save his practice. It was easy to convince him to falsify the documents." The secret phone started ringing in the drawer, its shrill sound echoing through the office like an alarm. The wife looked at the phone with absolute terror, knowing that whoever was calling would no longer accept excuses or postponements. "Who's calling?" asked the millionaire, picking up the phone. "Don't answer it," she begged. "It's them, the people my brother owes money to. If they know you found out." But he had already answered. A harsh and threatening voice spoke from the other end of the line. "The payment is overdue. If we don't have our money by tomorrow night, we'll come looking for additional collateral. Who are you? Asked the millionaire, his voice firm despite the growing fear. There was a pause, then a cold laugh. Who are you? Is the more interesting question. The woman didn't mention she had a husband. That changes things. The line went dead, leaving an ominous silence. The wife had collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "Now they know about you," she murmured. "Now you're in danger too." At that moment, the girl appeared at the office door, holding her new doll. "She said she was coming home today," she announced with her sweet and innocent voice. "She said the bad men were going to let her go." The millionaire knelt down to the girl's height, holding her small shoulders. "Where is she now? Do you know where I can find her?" "In the house, where the children work," she replied. "But she's sick, very sick. She said she can't take it anymore." His heart broke as he imagined his daughter, his little princess who used to draw butterflies and count steps, working as a maid, sick and alone somewhere in the city. His fortune accumulated over decades. His carefully planned investments, all his wealth, had failed to protect the most important person in his life. "We need to go get her now," he said, standing up with determination. "It's not that simple," said the wife through tears. "The family that has her, they won't just give her back. They invested money, they expected years of work in return, and now that the dangerous people know about you—" The secret phone rang again. This time, when he answered, the voice on the other end was different, calmer, more calculating. "Mr. Millionaire," said the voice, "we have your daughter. And now that we know who you are, the price of her freedom has just gone up considerably." The line went dead again, but the message was clear. His daughter had become a hostage of people who now knew exactly how much he could pay for her. And worst of all, his own wife had been the architect of this entire tragedy. As he processed the magnitude of the situation, the girl gently tugged on his sleeve. "They don't know I escaped," she whispered. "They don't know I know where she is." For a moment, a spark of hope shone in his eyes. Maybe there was still a way to save his daughter before it was too late. The trip to the outskirts of town was made in complete silence, only broken by the occasional sobs of the wife in the back seat and the anxious breathing of the millionaire behind the wheel. The girl was beside him, pointing out the directions with an eerie precision for someone so young, her small hands indicating each turn and street as if she had memorized the path during months of suffering. "There," she said, pointing to a 2-story house with peeling paint and a neglected garden. "That's where she is." The neighborhood was a shocking contrast to the life of luxury he knew. Simple houses squeezed against each other. Children played in the dusty streets, and the smell of homemade food mixed with the odor of sewage coming from the clogged sewers. It was a world completely different from his universe of investments and wealth in financial assets. When he stopped the car in front of the house, he could see movement behind the torn curtains. The girl held his hand tightly, her small fingers trembling slightly. "She's in the back room," she whispered. "She's always there when she's too weak to work." The man who answered the door was short and stocky, with dirty clothes and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him, several children peered out curiously, all with patched clothes and faces that seemed to have aged before their time. "What do you want?" asked the man, blocking the entrance with his body. "I've come to get my daughter," said the millionaire, his voice firm despite his nervousness. "I know she's here." The man laughed, a harsh and unpleasant sound. "I don't know what you're talking about. Only my children and some children I help out of charity live here." "He's lying," murmured the girl, squeezing his hand tighter. "She's in there, in the dark room. She's had a fever for days." At that moment, a woman appeared behind the man, thin, with grey hair and a suspicious look. When her eyes met the girl, her face paled visibly. "How did she escape?" she whispered to her husband, thinking that no one else had heard. But the millionaire heard perfectly. "So you know her," he said, taking a step forward. "And if she escaped, it means you were keeping children against their will." The tension in the air intensified. The man looked nervously at the street, as if he expected someone to appear to help him. The woman wrung her hands, clearly divided between fear and greed. "Listen here," said the man finally. "We received a good amount to take care of these children. They work in exchange for food and shelter. It's a fair deal." "Child labor is not a fair deal," retorted the millionaire, his voice laden with an authority that made the couple step back. "And kidnapping is a serious crime. Do you know who I am?" The couple exchanged nervous glances. It was obvious that they recognized his wealth from the luxury car and expensive clothes, but they didn't know exactly who they were dealing with. "I own one of the largest companies in this area," he continued. "I have enough resources to end your lives if anything happened to my daughter. I have connections that can make you disappear without a trace." It was a lie, but it worked. The man swallowed hard, while the woman began to tremble visibly. She's sick," admitted the woman finally. "She hasn't been able to get out of bed for 3 days. We thought it was just laziness, but—" The millionaire's heart raced. "Take me to her, now." The couple reluctantly guided them through the poorly maintained house. The other children watched them in silence, their eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and hope. It was clear that everyone there lived in deplorable conditions, being forced to work in exchange for scraps. The back room was small and stuffy, with only a high window that barely let in light. On a mattress on the floor, a small figure was huddled under a thin blanket. When the millionaire approached, his world completely crumbled. The child lying there was unrecognizable as his daughter. Her golden hair was dull and tangled, her thin face was pale and feverish, and her small body seemed to have shrunk to half its size. But when he knelt beside her and whispered her name, her eyes opened, and they were unmistakably the same green eyes that he saw in the mirror every morning. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice weak and hoarse. You came to get me?" The tears that he had held back for months finally overflowed. "Yes, my princess, Daddy is here. I'm going to take you home." She tried to smile, but even that simple gesture seemed to require immense effort. "I knew you were going to find me. I told little Angel about our secret place in the garden." He looked at the girl who had guided him there, finally understanding the connection. His daughter had found a way to send a message through another child who managed to escape. It was a desperate plan, but it had worked. "She helped me," continued his daughter, pointing to the girl. "When I was too weak to escape, she promised she would find you." The millionaire turned to the girl who had changed his life. "How did you manage to escape?" "I'm small," she said simply, "and they didn't pay attention to me. I thought that if I found her father, maybe he could save all of us." At that moment, the sound of approaching cars made everyone freeze. The couple who kept the children looked out the window and paled even more. "It's them," murmured the man. "The people who paid for the girl. They must have found out she was here." The millionaire picked up his daughter in his arms, feeling how light she was, too fragile. "Is there another way out?" "Through the back," said the woman quickly. "But they'll surround the house." "They won't," said the girl suddenly. "I know a way they don't." She guided them through a back door that led to a backyard full of tall weeds. On the other side, there was a broken fence that led to a vacant lot. As they sneaked through the weeds, they could hear harsh voices in front of the house, men shouting orders and making threats. "This way," whispered the girl, guiding them through a maze of alleys and back streets that she knew perfectly. "There's a place where we can hide until they're gone." The place was a small abandoned shed, hidden between two houses. Inside, the millionaire finally had time to properly examine his daughter. She was clearly malnourished and dehydrated, but alive. Miraculously alive. "We need to take her to the hospital," he whispered to the girl. "No," said his daughter weakly. "The bad men know the hospitals. They'll find us there." She was right. His wife had corrupted doctors before. It was likely that the network of corruption was wider than he imagined. Then we're going home, he decided. I'm going to call a private doctor, someone I can trust. Hours later, when they finally arrived at the mansion, he carried his daughter inside as if she were made of crystal. The wife, who had remained silent throughout the rescue operation, broke down in tears at the sight of the child. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I never wanted it to come to this. I was desperate. The millionaire looked at her with a mixture of anger and pity. You're going to pay for what you've done. But now, the only thing that matters is taking care of her. In the days that followed, his daughter slowly recovered. The private doctor confirmed that she was malnourished and traumatized, but that she would recover completely with proper care. The girl who had saved her stayed with them, becoming practically a sister to his daughter. The wife was removed from the house, facing legal consequences for her crimes. The couple who kept the children were reported, and all the other children were rescued and placed in safe homes. 2 weeks later, as he watched his 2 girls playing in the garden, his daughter finally regaining color in her face, and the courageous girl who had saved her laughing for the first time since they met, the millionaire reflected on how true wealth was not in his stocks, Bitcoin, or wealth in financial assets. It was there, in those children's laughter echoing through the garden where his daughter had once hidden her little treasures. "Daddy!" his daughter called, running towards him with renewed energy. "Look what Angel and I found." She held in her hand the old metal box from the secret hiding place, her eyes shining with the same joy as before the tragedy. Beside her, the girl smiled shyly, finally looking like a normal 4-year-old. At that moment, he knew that they had found their way back home, not only physically, but emotionally. The scars would remain, but love had proven to be stronger than any betrayal or suffering. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.